NBC News was first to report his involvement in the meeting, but his presence and his Russian resume are giving critics new fuel in the quest for answers about the possible connections between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin. NBC's intelligence and national security reporter Ken Delaney, who broke that story, is in Washington. Ken, take us through who Ahmet Chen is. I read that he's saying he's just a dad in D.C. who rides his bike around and takes his kid to school. Why is he drawing this scrutiny?
He is all of those things, Steph. He's also a Russian-born lobbyist fixer with a background in the Soviet military. He served in a counterintelligence unit that was hunting for spies back in his younger days. He moved to the United States, became a U.S. citizen, and has worked in Washington in the shadows in corporate intelligence work, has represented Russian oligarchs and Russian interests. And for the last several years, he's been working on this lobbying campaign against a set of sanctions called the Magnitsky Act, which is basically on the same side as the Kremlin, although he claims he's not employed by the Kremlin. One of the reasons his presence at this meeting is getting such scrutiny, Steph, is because it was concealed. And, we broke this story a day after Don Trump Jr. went on television and said, "I've told you everything there is to know about the meeting." And then this emerges that there was this other figure here. And so, and with a very interesting and colorful resume. And so you can just bet that Bob Mueller and other investigators are going to look very closely at his presence at the meeting and at the meeting itself.
Well, turning to the meeting, he was in that meeting with Moscow lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya and a translator. Do we have any sense of how big a role he might have played? And do you have any sense if we are really going to ever learn what happened in that meeting?
Well, that's a really good question, because unless there is a written record or an audio record, I mean, the Trump team is claiming that very few records exist and that they can't even say for sure who else was in the meeting. So Rinat's role, I mean, he worked very closely with Veselnitskaya on this anti-Magnitsky Act campaign. And so that's what he has said his role was about at that meeting, although he has said that she did all the talking. But of course, none of that really squares with the emails that we saw that came from Rob Goldstone, the music promoter, who was working on behalf of the Agalarov family, these Russian oligarchs with ties to Trump, who promised direct help to the Trump campaign from the Russian government. That's the reason this meeting was set up, don't forget. That's why this is getting so much scrutiny. And Don Jr., instead of calling the FBI, took the meeting and said, "We'd love to have the help of the Russian government, and we'd love to have derogatory information about Hillary Clinton." So that really, intelligence experts who look at this say, don't worry so much about what happened in the meeting. Look at the fact that the Russian government offered help and the Trump organization accepted it. Steph.
All right, NBC's Ken Delaney, and thank you so much. Let's dig into the legal